Okay, folks, that's a wrap for the Boston Celtics 2017-2018 season, which means the fun begins because the offseason is actually where all the fun is.
That's right.
That's where all the drama happens in the NBA. Right. We get on Twitter. We're just constantly refreshing. The Celtics have been big players in the offseason the last few years. I don't know how this year will be different because they've acquired their superstars. They have their young stud rookies and second-year and third-year guys. Right. That being said, Danny Ainge has never been one to sit on his hands. So one of the huge questions that, or at least around the Celtics, people are going to be asking is, with Marcus Smart set to hit restricted free agency, will he end up back on the Celtics? I'm going to ask Jared first on this one.
Oh, thank you so much for asking me first. I would say I expect him to, but it doesn't mean necessarily long-term.
Okay.
When he came into the season, he was looking at somewhere between 12 to 14 million potentially for his annual salary on a new deal. Right now, the way the market is shaping up, it looks like the mid-level might be the only thing that's really available to him, just because of there's so few teams at cap space and so few that are willing to, I'd say, spend a lot of their cap space on a guy who is a really extremely important role player, but isn't a centerpiece at this point.
Sure.
So I think he's probably going to either take the qualifying offer or a one-year mid-level from the Celtics or whomever he actually decides to stay with. But I don't really see a reason for him to leave Boston because I think things have gone pretty well for him here. Obviously, there's going to be even more competition for him to get minutes at the end of games.
Right. Sure.
I don't know if he's going to be closing out games in the conference finals if they get there next year just because of everyone else that they're going to be adding back onto this team. So it's a really tough choice for him, but he's on a team where they let him shoot as much as he wants. Tonight he had
unfortunately.
What did he shoot tonight? It was like 0 for 10 or something close to that.
Know,
it was not
close
good.
To that, yeah.
It was very bad.
Yeah.
But they give him the freedom and the support he needs to really play his game. So it's a good spot for him.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it, you made a good point, comes down to kind of his feelings about the team, because obviously he's not going to get the minutes that he got this year, like you had said, with Kyrie coming back, with Gordon Hayward, and just it's going to be a bit of a log jam in the backcourt. So it's kind of, to a point, it comes to him. I mean, he's going to feel out the market, of course, as most guys would do in his position, but I think I could see him taking the qualifying offer and potentially sticking around, like you said, again, not necessarily for the long term, but maybe for the next year or two going forward, and then, reevaluating the market and seeing where he can go from there.
Sure. Brad Stevens went with the 7-man rotation in Game 7. We just talked about Smart. Of those 7 players, which one is least likely to step on the court for the Celtics next year?
Want to start this one again?
Obviously Jason Tatum.
Yeah, right.
No, he's untouchable, right?
Yeah.
That's a great question.
That's a good question.
Honestly.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
So I think Rozier has the most potential to be moved because of the the logjam concern and him hitting free agency. I don't think they're going to move him, though, unless there's some sort of insane offer they can't turn down. The Kawhi Leonard question, I guess is what's out there.
Sure.
It sounds now like he's probably going to be re-signing based on current reports.
Yep.
However, when has a report ever really held up in the Kawhi situation this year? So
Kawhi and his guys, you never know.
Yeah, we'll wait till this group makes this decision, as Pop would say. But if he were to be available, Jalen, you assume, maybe even Rozier as well, will be the guys that could be involved with that trade. It is not an easy choice to make that trade. Usually it would be because Kawhi is, when he's healthy, a top 5 player in the NBA. He's entering his prime now. So they're hoping Jalen can be close to that level at some point.
Type player.
I mean, Jalen projects to be, he has a chance to get to that level.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe. But he projects to be clearly a perennial all-star.
Right.
There's a chance he could be an all-star as soon as next season based on what he did in the playoffs this year. There's a lot of inconsistency that both him and Tatum need to work out. Rozier, we saw it. Rozier, everybody was talking about as an all-star up until 2 weeks ago. This series was really rough for him. He obviously has a long ways to go. But, I mean, all these guys are extremely valuable trade assets, so Anthony Davis probably won't be on the market.
Right.
Kawhi seems the guy that could be on the market potentially, so Jalen is probably the most likely if that happens. But, frankly, I don't see them making a trade with any of these guys.
Yeah, I would probably say
Sounded
Terry
like you just traded Jaylen Brown, so you heard it here.
You heard it here first. Jared Wise chips off Jaylen Brown.
Great admiration for Jalen, and do not think he's worth trading unless it's some sort of insane opportunity.
I would agree with you there. I think probably Terry Rozier or Jaylen Brown are at the top of that list, but it all depends on the assets the teams are willing to throw for them, whether it's a stockpile of draft picks or whatever it may be. I think those two guys are at the top of that list, but again, I don't think it will happen. It really all depends on the trade market and what's really out there, and you never know. Maybe a team is willing to throw a top draft pick out there. But
here's the important thing, though. I don't know. I mean, Terry Rozier is probably worth like a top 7 to 10 draft pick.
Right.
The rest of those guys you do not trade.
No, they're
like,
untouchable.
maybe for the number 1 pick. Like this year, I think I really like Doncic, and I would be interested in it. Except for that, they have Hayward, who has a lot of similarities.
Sure.
They already have Kyrie. They don't necessarily need Doncic. They already know that Tatum is an elite prospect and that Brown is an elite prospect, and those guys are in their first and second season. So it's like they don't have any need to trade. There's nothing out there except for an MVP caliber player like Kawhi, if they really are confident he's healthy, or obviously Anthony Davis or maybe Karl Towns, whomever. There's like 10 guys in the NBA that are worth trading for at this point. They have 2 of the literally 5 to 10 best prospects in all of basketball.
Yeah. I think it's Rozier is my answer, and it's not because he had an awful game, Game 7, and I want him out of town.
Crazy, you're blaming Game 7 on.
Yeah, I know, crazy. I'm the only one, I bet. But I'm not, and I'm not even saying they should trade him. I just think it's most likely would be him, because think about it. He's proven that he can start, at least on some NBA teams, I would say. He's going to want to start, right, at some point. And next year, let's say he comes back. I mean, when's this guy going to play? I mean, he's made his name hitting some big shots late in games. I don't expect to see him on the court with once Kyrie Irving returns. And you're going to have Hayward out there. You're going to have Tatum out there. You're going to have Horford out there. You might have Smart out there for a stretch. I mean, and that's the other thing. If they bring back Smart, I think Rozier becomes the trade, because I don't know if you can bring the whole band back together like that.
Yeah.
And I think right now his value couldn't be higher. I mean, if you bring him back next year and he sits on the bench way more. Yeah, exactly. Man, they're just gonna let him walk, or someone's gonna give him starter money at some point. So I think if you get rid of him now, that would be the play. Would you trade Jason Tatum for anybody?
No.
Probably Anthony Davis, straight up. I would say, yeah. But Kawhi, because of Kawhi's injury concerns, I wouldn't do that at this point. Just because there's too much uncertainty there. But like if Kawhi was ever hurt and it was just like Kawhi for no reason was available for trade, I would have done that, because Kawhi was like, I thought the second most valuable player in the NBA last year.
And
like,
it was before you saw Tatum
gets to that point. It's not like like people are forgetting how good Kawhi and how good Anthony Davis is. It's like if you have to think that Tatum is on basically LeBron's level for you to not want to trade him for those guys, even if like there's like those guys are both young enough, they're both entering prime or pre-prime, that it's like the age thing doesn't matter so much. But besides that, I can't really think of anyone that could potentially be available, feasibly be available for any. I can't really think of anyone that couldn't be available that you would want to trade him for at this point. Yeah,
Anthony Davis is really the only name that comes to mind, and of course, I don't really think he's available anymore, and maybe he would be for Jason Tatum, but again, he has so much upside, and obviously his first season and this playoff run was so spectacular. The thought of trading him just gives me absolute nightmares. So my initial gut reaction is just straight up no. It's not. No.
Don't forget, Danny Ainge is better at his job than we are, so I think he knows all this.
Yeah,
slightly better. All right, well, it sounds like the Celtics have a good problem here going into the offseason. They've got too many good players. Who would have thought?
What a shame.
So it will be a lot of fun to see how things shake out, and we'll have you covered the whole way through. Thank you guys for following along this season, but the fun, as I said, is only getting started.